Arnie in Washington had a question about the no true Scotsman fallacy.
Hello.
Yeah, as applied specifically to Mormonism. So like I'm an ex-Mormon now, but when I was a Mormon, it used to drive me crazy when people would say, "Oh, Mormons, they're not real Christians," and they draw this line about some certain beliefs. And then as an ex-Mormon, I've been listening to the show a lot, and Mormons will call in. Well, people that say they're Mormons will call in, and I'll notice that the things that they believe don't match up to what my experience was as a Mormon. Like, say they'll mention their belief in hell or something. So my question is, am I guilty of doing the no true Scotsman fallacy? And also, I'm not even sure it's a fallacy now that I'm like trying to re-examine it. Can you help me out there?
So
Hello?
I guess, when you recognize there's a fallacy, when someone's like changing the definition in order to make their argument work, and you notice, oh, this is a no true Scotsman, because they're just saying, oh, you're not a Scotsman if you don't have salt in your porridge or whatever. That doesn't then mean you can like go completely to the other way and say we can't have definitions with some kind of edge to them, or we can't say someone definitely isn't something. If someone calls in and they say, I'm a Mormon and I believe that God is a helicopter because it's written in my book, that like we can say, well, that's just not what 99% of Mormons believe. That's just not really what we would describe as a Mormon. And if you want to say, well, actually, this is what Mormons really are, we could say, well, all right, we can use the label Mormon here, but this isn't what most people mean when they say Mormon.
The only time it's a no true Scotsman fallacy is when you're saying that the thing that is disqualifying for them is a part of the definition of Scotsman when it's not. And the same is true for Mormon. So like you said, if no true Mormon would ever live in Canada, well, there's no line between the tenets of Mormonism and whether or not they live in Canada.
Yeah.
If you said no true Mormon would believe X when you're talking about a point of doctrine, when there are in fact Mormons who do believe that and it's not necessarily in conflict, then you're engaging in a fallacy because you're creating criteria to exclude something from a definition when it has nothing to do with it.
So it's not moving the goalposts mid-definition that's the fallacious nature of the no true Scotsman fallacy. It's just if that line is drawn in the wrong place. Is that what's fallacious about it?
Yeah, it's the no true Scotsman puts sugar on his porridge. Well, that's not has nothing to do with the definition of a Scotsman. Everything else, well, no true Scotsman would blah, blah, blah. We have to figure out, there has to be some definition of what a true Scotsman is before you can declare who is or isn't one. And so when it comes to something like Mormonism, the only thing you can do is look at doctrine and say, hey, maybe this is a true Mormon, maybe this is not a true Mormon, who knows? No true Mormon would ever have multiple wives? Uh-oh. Well, now you've drawn a distinction between modern Mormonism and the FLDS organization. So now it's a point of doctrine. But to say no true Mormon would, vote Republican, that has nothing to do with it.
So what would be like? So am I guilty of the no true Scotsman fallacy by like when a caller calls in and starts talking about how Mormons believe in hell, and I know that they don't? Am I not? So I'm not guilty of the no true Scotsman fallacy as long as where I'm drawing that line is accurate.
If it's part of the definition of being a Mormon, I guess. I don't know, that probably doesn't really add much. I guess the difficulty with religion is that you could get in a situation where you could say, no true Mormons believe in hell, and then you find out that there's like a city somewhere with 1 million of them in, and they all call themselves Mormon, and they all have generally Mormon beliefs, and they all happen to also believe in hell. And then what? We can accept that some Mormons believe in hell, although it's actually disagrees with their core text. I mean, you do get all of these different groups, subgroups of religions and like sects and stuff, which do believe in things which just are contradictory to their supposed rule book. And then we can either say, well, this whole denomination isn't technically Christian, or we can say, well, now Christian covers this slight variation. And I guess that's the difficulty with defining religions, and the difficulty with drawing these lines. And that's probably why lots of the different denominations don't like each other, because lots of Christians will say, oh, Catholics aren't real Christians, and the Catholics think they're real Christians, or
some of them do.
Some of them do.
Some Catholics are happy to point out they're not Christians.
Right. And then like who's drawing this line? Like if someone calls in and they say, I'm a Christian, and that's what I'm talking about, and I'm a Christian because I'm a Catholic, then you could say, well, actually, some Christians think that Catholics can't be Christians, and some Catholics even think that. But then this isn't a no true Scotsman necessarily, because we've just got a grey area definition here, which we might have to decide upon in order to have a conversation. But if you were to say, I'm just trying to think of an example, a much more common example would be to say, oh, well, someone can't be a Christian if they're a murderer, because Bible says don't murder. And that's bullshit, because we know that no Christians in any denomination follow all the rules all the time.
Right.
So that would be a completely ridiculous no true. That's like a clear example of a no true Scotsman, which is different to just arguing about where the fuzzy edges of the definitions are.
I'm curious why any of this matters, Arnie. What difference does it make what fallacy it is?
Well, I'm just sort of in the process of re-examining some of my assumptions and sort of deciding what things are legitimate, what things aren't, what things came from my, growing up and my heritage.
Yeah, but so the whole new true Scotsman thing is about who qualifies for a particular label. And all I would be concerned about is, are the doctrinal claims of Mormonism true? What else could possibly matter? I don't care whether or not somebody's a Mormon. I care whether or not Mormonism is true.
Or their individual claims are true. If you've got two different Mormons and one of them, they're both saying they're not a Mormon because they believe this, well, that's fine, but let's evaluate all of their individual claims, and then we can find out whether one of them is right or neither of them are right. And then we can talk about labels. Well, we can decide whether we're a Mormon now.
My concern is basically understanding fallacies so that I can avoid them. And so the no true Scotsman fallacy is a fallacy that I thought I understood until I discovered that, wait, am I using that? And so that's why I gave you guys a call.
So the no true Scotsman fallacy is when you try to exclude someone from a label based on criteria that isn't part of a determination about that label.
So as long as the categories, like say any category, it doesn't have to be Mormonism, as long as the category is correct, like the line where they're drawing that line is correct, then it's not fallacious.
Well, I don't know if you could say correct, because potentially if I started a new religion today called Katyism, and then I said no Katyists are murderers, it as part of my religion, it's the same as Christianity, but it's a new sect and none of us are murderers, then like that could be true, but it could still be some kind of no true Scotsman when in 100 years Katyists go on some kind of crusade, and then I'll be like, oh, it's nothing to do with me because I said that you can't be, and that's,
yeah.
It might be true at one point, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's still like part of the thing that defines this concept that we're talking about.
It is incidentally true right up to the moment it's not. You can have an entire group of people who've never murdered anyone, who are all Katyists, and then one of them murders someone, and they were still a Katyist when they did it.
Yeah.
So it's the moving of the goalposts, or the moving of the category that makes it.
I don't know how else to explain this to you, because you keep kind of trying to come back with some different way of phrasing it. The fallacy of the no true Scotsman fallacy is when you invent criteria to exclude someone from a category when that category itself does not have any contingency upon that criteria.
Inaccurate categories.
Yeah. It's like, it's building it. I
think I get it.
Yeah. Something, in order to discuss a definition of something, there will be some variables and descriptions that make this concept match the label that we're using. And then if you just come up with something else. So for example, you might say that our working definition of a chair is something with legs that we sit on. And, you know, that's not the best definition of a chair. And it's actually very difficult to define chair. But we could say that that's roughly our definition. And then someone says, oh, well, that's green though. So a no true chair is green. Like that's not part of the definition of the chair in any sense. There's never going to be a point where we have a sensible working definition for chair where whether it's green or not is part of it, because its color isn't a key important factor of this object that we're trying to describe with the word chair. Whereas if someone said no true chair is imaginary, then you could say, well, yeah, because a key part of a chair is that it's a real object. So it's not always obvious. I do understand that, you know, often things have a lot of hidden things that have to be true about them. Like if we try and define chair, then all of a sudden it's like, well, can chairs be this big? You're like, well, maybe people have to sit on them, but that is a model chair, so that does still kind of look like a chair. You know, there's a lot. This is the trouble with trying to describe things and define things, is it's often a lot more deceptive. But you can often find these like orthogonal things when we're talking about Mormons. It doesn't matter what color. Actually, I probably shouldn't. I was going to say what color shoes they wear, but I don't know what kind of rules Mormons have. They might even have a rule on that. But it doesn't matter, like, you know, how many letters there are in their name. That's a property of people, but it's just orthogonal to whether someone's a Mormon or not.
I got to let you go, Arnie. We are past time.
I understand. All right, I understand. Thank you.